Captain Zekthul stood on the bridge of his warship, the Times Crimson Talon **. His 4 arms moved across the control panels as he studied the screens before him. The red lights of his ship cast shadows across his scaled face. Today would be a good day for the Kethvar Dominion. His ship was one of the most feared vessels in this part of space. The Times Crimson Talon Times was 300 meters long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Zekthul had used those weapons many times before. Most species learned quickly to stay out of Kethvar space. "Captain," called his weapons officer. "Veltok. We have found something interesting." Zekthul turned his large head toward the younger Kethvar. "What is it?" "A human ship, sir. It appears to be alone and drifting near the border of our space." The captain felt his blood warm with excitement. Humans were new to space travel. They had only made contact with other species a few years ago. Most reports said they were weak and preferred talking instead of fighting. This would be easy. "Show me," Zekthul ordered. The main screen changed to show a small ship floating in the darkness of space. It looked like a simple cargo vessel. The hull was gray and dented in several places. The ship had basic shields and what appeared to be light weapons meant for protection against pirates. "Have you tried to contact them?" the captain asked. "Yes, sir," a human female responded. "She says her name is Captain Sarah Chen, and that her ship is called the Times Endurance **. She seems willing to talk." Zekthul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Of course she wants to talk. Humans always want to talk instead of fight." "What is her cargo?" Veltok checked his instruments. "She claims to be carrying supplies to outer colonies, standard trade goods, construction materials, that sort of thing." The captain nodded. This was perfect. The Kethvar Dominion had been looking for a way to test human resolve. The other species in this part of space needed to see that humans were just as weak as they suspected. One destroyed human ship would send a clear message. "Open a channel," Zekthul commanded. The screen changed to show the bridge of the human ship. Captain Sarah Chen sat in a simple chair, looking directly at the camera. She was smaller than Zekthul had expected. Humans were tiny compared to the Kethvar. She had dark hair tied back and wore a blue uniform. Her face showed no fear, which surprised him slightly. "Captain Chen," Zekthul said, making his voice as threatening as possible. "I am Captain Zekthul, of the Kethvar Dominion. You are in our space without permission." The human captain tilted her head slightly. "Captain Zekthul, according to my navigation charts, this area is neutral space. We are simply passing through on our way to deliver supplies. Your charts are wrong, human. This space belongs to the Dominion. You will surrender your ship immediately." Captain Chen was quiet for a moment. She looked at something off-screen, then back at Zekthul. "I see. May I have a few minutes to contact my superiors?" This is an unexpected situation. Zekthul felt disappointed. He had hoped for more resistance, or at least some fear. Instead, this human seemed almost bored. "You have 5 minutes. Do not try to run or call for help. My weapons are locked onto your ship." "5. Understood," Chen replied. "We will not move from this position." The communication ended. Zekthul turned to his crew. The bridge held 12 Kethvar warriors, all experienced in battle. They had fought against the Zelani Empire and the Kordan Republics. Every one of them agreed that humans seemed to be the weakest species they had encountered. "Sir," said his science officer, "Kexdal, something seems strange about their cargo hold. The materials are denser than normal trade goods. Perhaps they are carrying metals or heavy equipment," Zekthul replied. "It does not matter. Scan for weapons. Only basic defensive systems, sir. Nothing that could threaten us." The captain felt satisfied. His ship carried plasma cannons that could cut through a planet's crust. The human vessel had small laser turrets that would barely scratch his shields. This would not even be a real fight. "Captain," Veltok called out. "The human ship is doing something strange. They appear to be reorganizing their cargo." "What does that mean?" "I am not sure, sir. There is movement in their cargo bay. But their ship has not moved. Zekthul dismissed this with a wave of his hand. Probably trying to hide their most valuable goods. It will not help them. The 5 minutes passed slowly. Zekthul used the time to study the human ship more carefully. It was clearly old, and had seen many flights. The hull showed signs of repairs in several places. The engines were basic models that most species had stopped using years ago. Everything about the ship suggested that humans were behind other races in technology. Finally, the communication channel opened again. Captain Chen appeared on the screen, looking exactly the same as before. Her expression had not changed at all. "Captain Zekthul," she said calmly, "I have spoken with my superiors." "Good. I assume you are ready to surrender?" Chen shook her head slightly. "I am afraid we cannot comply with your demands, Captain. We have orders to complete our mission." "Chen. Argaz complete." Zekthul felt his anger growing. "You refuse to surrender? Do you understand what my ship can do to yours?" "I believe I do," the human replied. Her voice remained steady and calm. "However, I have received my orders. We cannot surrender our cargo or our ship." The Kethvar captain had heard enough. These humans needed to learn that the Dominion was not something they could ignore. He would destroy their engines first, then board their ship. Perhaps some of the crew would survive to tell other humans what happened when they refused the Dominion. "You have made a mistake, human," Zekthul growled. "Prepare to see what happens when you challenge the Kethvar Dominion." Captain Chen nodded slowly. "Captain, before we begin, I should mention something. You wanted to know about our cargo. It does not matter now." "I think it does," Chen said. There was something different in her voice now. Something that made Zekthul pause. "We are not carrying trade goods, Captain. We are carrying weapons. Military-grade weapons designed specifically for field testing." For the first time, Zekthul felt a small chill run through his body. "You are lying." Captain Chen smiled for the first time since they had started talking. It was not a friendly smile. "No, Captain. I am not lying. And there is one more thing you should know about us." "What is that?" "We are not merchants, Captain Zekthul. We are soldiers." The words hung in space between the two ships like a weapon waiting to fire. Zekthul stared at the human captain on his screen. Captain Chen still sat calmly in her chair, but something had changed. Her eyes seemed sharper now, more focused. The easy manner from before was gone. "You are trying to trick me," Zekthul said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "Your ship is clearly a cargo vessel." "Is it?" Chen asked. She touched something on her control panel. "Computer, display external configuration to Kethvar vessel." Zekthul watched as his sensors showed new information about the human ship. What had seemed like cargo containers were actually modular hull sections. The dents and scratches he had seen were not damage from long use. They were camouflage, designed to make the ship look old and harmless. "Clever," he admitted. "But it does not matter. You are still outnumbered and outgunned." "Are we?" Chen replied. "Tell me, Captain, what do you know about human military doctrine?" The question caught Zekthul off guard. In truth, he knew very little. The Dominion's intelligence reports about humans were limited. Most other species had similar information. Humans seemed to prefer diplomacy and trade. They had only been in space for a short time. Their technology appeared basic compared to older civilizations. "Your species is new to space," Zekthul said. "You have no real military experience." Captain Chen laughed. It was a cold sound that made several of his crew members look uncomfortable. "No military experience? Captain, my species has been at war for thousands of years. We have fought wars on every continent of our planet. We have created weapons that could destroy our own world several times over. Fighting among yourselves is different from real warfare," Zekthul replied, but he felt less confident now. "Is it? Let me ask you something. How many wars has the Kethvar Dominion fought in the last 100 years? Zekthul thought about this. 3 major conflicts, several minor ones. "And how many people died in your largest war?" Perhaps 50,000 Kethvar. Maybe twice that number of enemies. Chen nodded slowly. In one war on our planet, over 70 million humans died. That was just one war, Captain. We have fought dozens like it. We have weapons that can kill millions in minutes. We have strategies that can destroy entire civilizations. The Kethvar captain felt his confidence slipping. But you choose diplomacy now. You are peaceful. We choose diplomacy because we know what war really costs, Chen corrected him. We tried to avoid this situation, Captain. We really did. But you insisted. Zekthul looked at his weapons officer. Veltok was studying his instruments with growing concern. Sir, the younger Kethvar whispered. Their energy readings are increasing. Something is happening to their ship. What kind of something? I am not sure. The hull appears to be changing. On the main screen, Zekthul could see the human ship beginning to transform. External panels were sliding away to reveal dark metal underneath. What had looked like a simple cargo vessel was becoming something else entirely. The transformation was smooth and precise, like a machine designed for exactly this purpose. Captain Chen, Zekthul said, trying to keep his voice steady. What is your ship? The UFS Times Endurance *, she replied. United Federation ship, a stealth destroyer on classified mission parameters. She paused, then continued. What you are seeing now is what we call Protocol Omega. Full combat configuration. The transformation completed, and Zekthul felt his blood turn cold. The ship before him was no longer a harmless cargo vessel. It was sleek and dark, bristling with weapon systems that his computers could not identify. The Endurance Times looked like something designed by beings who understood war on a level that most species never reached. Your cargo, he managed to say. Experimental weapons systems for field testing, Chen confirmed. We were delivering them to our research facilities in the outer colonies. The weapons are now installed and ready for use. Zekthul looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the transformed human ship with expressions of growing alarm. These were experienced warriors who had faced many enemies, but none of them had ever seen anything like this. Sir, his science officer called out, I am detecting multiple target locks from their vessel. They have weapons trained on every critical system of our ship. How is that possible? We just met them. Unknown, sir. But they appear to have detailed knowledge of our ship's design. Captain Chen spoke again. Captain Zekthul, I should explain something about human intelligence gathering. When we first made contact with other species, we were not just introducing ourselves, we were studying you. Studying us? Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange was also a reconnaissance operation. We have been learning about every species in this part of space for years. We know your weapons, your tactics, your weaknesses. Zekthul felt a chill run down his spine. That is not how first contact is supposed to work. According to whom? Chen asked. You see, Captain, humans learned a long time ago that information is the most powerful weapon. We have detailed files on Kethvar ship designs, military organization, and strategic thinking. We know exactly how you fight, because we have been watching you fight other species. The Kethvar captain realized that everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. They were not naive newcomers to space. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war, and they had been studying their potential enemies from the beginning. What do you want? He asked. Originally, we wanted to complete our mission and leave quietly. But you chose to attack a human ship. You chose to make this a military situation instead of a diplomatic one. We can still resolve this diplomatically. Captain Chen shook her head. No, Captain. You fired on us. In human military doctrine, that makes you an enemy combatant. We do not negotiate with enemy combatants during active operations. Zekthul saw his options disappearing. My ship is larger than yours. We have more weapons. Do you? Computer, display weapons comparison. New information appeared on Zekthul's screens. The human ship's weapon systems were completely unknown to his computers. The energy readings were higher than anything in his database. Worse, The targeting systems were already locked onto his ship with a precision that seemed impossible. "Captain," Chen said, her voice now completely professional and cold. "You wanted to see what humans do when attacked. You wanted to test our resolve and send a message to your superiors about human weakness." "Yes," Zekthul admitted. "Congratulations," Captain Chen replied. "You are about to become the first alien species to discover what human military doctrine actually looks like. I suggest you record everything. Your superiors will want to study what happens next." The communication ended, leaving Zekthul staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew prepared for battle, but he could see the fear in their eyes. They had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something that had been pretending to sleep. The bridge of the Times, Crimson Talon Times, fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the nervous breathing of the crew. Zekthul stood frozen, staring at the dark screen where Captain Chen's face had been moments before. The human ship hung in space before them, no longer looking like harmless prey. "Sir," Veltok whispered. "What are your orders?" Zekthul forced himself to think. He was a captain of the Kethvar Dominion. He had destroyed enemies before. One ship, no matter how advanced, could not defeat his entire vessel. His crew numbered over 200 warriors. The humans probably had no more than 50 people aboard their ship. "Target their weapons systems," he ordered. "We will disable them and board their ship." "Sir," his science officer called out urgently, "I am reading massive energy buildups throughout their vessel. Whatever they are preparing to do, it is big." "Fire warning shots," Zekthul commanded. "Show them we are serious." The Times Crimson Talon's Times plasma cannons fired bright bolts of energy that streaked across space toward the human ship. The shots were deliberately aimed to miss, intended to demonstrate the Kethvar's superior firepower. The Times Endurance Times did not move to avoid the shots. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma bolts simply disappeared as they got close to the human ship, absorbed by some kind of defensive system that did not show up on any of Zekthul's sensors. "What was that?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The energy just vanished. I have never seen technology like this." Before anyone could respond, the Times Endurance Times fired back. But these were not warning shots. A beam of pure light erupted from the human ship and struck the Times Crimson Talon's Times forward shields. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire vessel, throwing crew members to the floor. Zekthul grabbed his command chair to keep from falling. "Shield status," he shouted. "Forward shields down to 60%, Veltok reported, his voice filled with shock. "Sir, that was just one shot. Return fire, all weapons." The Times Crimson Talon Times unleashed its full arsenal. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and particle beams all fired at once toward the human ship. The space between the vessels lit up with destructive energy. The Times Endurance Times moved. Zekthul had never seen anything like it. The human ship twisted through space like a living thing, avoiding most of the incoming fire with impossible grace. The few shots that connected were absorbed by the same mysterious defense system that had stopped the warning shots. "How are they moving like that?" Zekthul asked. "Their engines are producing gravitational fields that should not be possible," his science officer replied. "They are not just moving through space, they are bending space around them." Another beam from the Times Endurance Times struck the Times Crimson Talon asterisk, this time hitting the port weapons array. The explosion tore through 3 decks and killed 15 crew members instantly. "They are targeting our weapons specifically," Veltok observed. "Not trying for a quick kill. They want us helpless." Zekthul realized with growing horror that the humans were playing with them. They could have destroyed the Times Crimson Talon Times with their first shot, but they chose not to. They were demonstrating their superiority instead of simply winning. "Sir," his communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission from the human ship." On screen, Captain Chen appeared again. Behind her, Zekthul could see other humans working at their stations. They moved with calm efficiency, showing no signs of stress or fear. These were not merchants caught by surprise. These were professional soldiers doing their job. Captain Zekthul, Chen said. I wanted to explain what is happening to you. You are attacking us. No, Chen corrected. We are demonstrating. You see, when humans first encountered other species, we made an interesting discovery. Most galactic civilizations have rules about warfare, honor codes, limitations on weapons and tactics, agreements about what is acceptable in battle. Another shot from the Time's endurance times disabled the Time's Crimson Talon's Time's starboard engines. The ship lurched to one side, and emergency lights began flashing throughout the bridge. Humans never agreed to any of those rules, Chen continued. We were never part of your galactic civilization when those agreements were made. We are not bound by your limitations. What does that mean? Zekthul demanded. It means we use weapons that you consider too dangerous, tactics that you think are dishonorable, strategies that violate your ideas of civilized warfare. Chen paused. For example, nuclear weapons. The word sent a chill through every member of Zekthul's crew. Nuclear weapons were banned by every civilized species. They were considered too destructive, too dangerous to control. Only the most savage races still used them. You would not dare, Zekthul said. Would we not? Computer? Arm nuclear torpedoes? On his screens, Zekthul watched as ports opened along the Time's Endurance's Time's hull. Weapons emerged that his computer could barely analyze. The energy readings were beyond anything in his database. Those weapons are illegal under the Galactic Warfare Convention, he protested. A convention that humans never signed, Chen reminded him. Captain, let me tell you about human history. We have fought wars using biological weapons that could kill entire populations. We have created bombs that turn cities into glass. We have developed strategies that target civilian populations specifically to break enemy morale. The Time's Crimson Talon Times shuddered as another precise shot disabled its communication arrays. We tried to be better than that when we reached space, Chen continued. We hoped that meeting other species would teach us new ways to resolve conflicts. But you chose to attack us. You chose to make this a military situation. We can surrender, Zekthul said desperately. Can you? Let me check human military regulations. Chen looked at something off-screen. According to our rules of engagement, enemy vessels that fire on human ships without provocation are classified as hostile combatants. The recommended response is total destruction to prevent future attacks. Zekthul felt his world collapsing around him. Everything the Dominion believed about humans was wrong. They were not weak newcomers to space. They were something far worse. They were a species that had perfected warfare to a degree that other civilizations could not even imagine. Please, he said. We made a mistake. Yes, you did, Chen agreed. You assumed that because humans prefer diplomacy, we are weak. You thought that because we are new to space, we do not understand warfare. But Captain, we understand warfare better than any species in this galaxy. We have been fighting wars since before your civilization discovered fire. The Times, Endurance Times fired again. This time hitting the Time's Crimson Talon's Time's life support systems. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The difference between humans and other species, Chen continued, is that we learned from our wars. We became better at them. We developed weapons and tactics that could destroy entire worlds. And then we decided to stop using them because we finally understood what war really costs. Then why are you doing this to us? Captain Chen's expression hardened. Because you attacked us first, Captain. Because you thought we were weak and tried to take advantage of that weakness. Because your species needs to learn that humans are not prey. The Time's Crimson Talon Times was now completely disabled. Its weapons were destroyed. Its engines were offline. And its communication systems were dead. The crew could do nothing but wait to see what the humans would do next. Captain Zekthul, Chen said, I want you to understand something very important. This is not even close to our full military capability. This ship is a prototype. These weapons are experimental. Our real military fleet is thousands of times more powerful than what you are seeing today. Zekthul could not respond. He could barely think. The implications of what he was hearing were too terrible to fully understand. You came here to send a message about human weakness, Chen continued. Instead, you are going to send a very different message. You are going to tell the galaxy what happens when someone attacks a human ship. The communication ended again, leaving Zekthul alone with his crew and the terrible knowledge of what they had awakened. The Times Crimson Talon Times drifted helplessly in space, its crew working frantically to restore power to critical systems. Zekthul stood on his damaged bridge, watching his warriors struggle with technology that had been perfectly functional minutes before. The humans had not just disabled his ship, they had done it with surgical precision, targeting exactly the right systems to leave them alive but powerless. "Sir," his science officer called out, "I am detecting multiple new contacts approaching our position." Zekthul felt a moment of hope. "Dominion reinforcements?" "Yes, sir. 3 battle cruisers and 2 destroyers. Admiral Thekmore is commanding the task force personally." The hope died as quickly as it had come. If Admiral Thekmore was coming, it meant the Dominion High Command was taking this situation very seriously. It also meant that word of the attack on a human ship had already reached the highest levels of government. "Open communications with the Admiral," Zekthul ordered. The main screen showed the bridge of the battlecruiser Times Iron Fist **. Admiral Thekmore stood in the center of the command deck. His 8 eyes focused on Zekthul with obvious anger. The Admiral was old, even by Kethvar standards, and had fought in every major war for the past century. "Captain Zekthul," the Admiral growled, "explain why you attacked a human vessel without authorization." "Sir, the ship was in our space. They refused to surrender when ordered. And now?" Zekthul looked around his ruined bridge. "They have disabled us, Admiral. The human vessel is far more advanced than our intelligence reports suggested." Admiral Thekmore's expression grew darker. "One human ship disabled the Times Crimson Talon **. That is impossible." Before Zekthul could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout his ship. The human vessel was moving again, positioning itself between the disabled Times, Crimson Talon Times, and the approaching Dominion fleet. "Sir," Veltok called out urgently, "the human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies." Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge of both ships. "Attention Kethvar vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen, of the United Federation Ship Times Endurance **. You have entered an active combat zone where your forces initiated hostilities against a human vessel." Admiral Thekmore stepped forward on his bridge. "Human Captain, this is Admiral Thekmore of the Kethvar Dominion. Release our ship immediately, and withdraw from this system." "I am afraid I cannot do that, Admiral," Chen replied. "Your captain attacked my ship without provocation. Under human military law, that makes your entire fleet complicit in an act of war. You are outnumbered 5 to 1, the Admiral pointed out. "Am I?" Chen asked. "Computer, display tactical analysis." On both Kethvar bridges, screens lit up with information that made the crews step back in shock. The human ship's computers had already analyzed every vessel in the Dominion fleet. Weapon placements, shield configurations, engine specifications, crew complements, everything was laid out in perfect detail. "How do you have our ship specifications?" Admiral Thekmore demanded. As I explained to Captain Zekthul, humans have been studying every species in this region for years. We know exactly how your ships are built, how they fight, and how to destroy them. The Admiral looked at his tactical officer, who nodded grimly. The human analysis was completely accurate. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "my ship's computer has already calculated optimal attack patterns for engaging your fleet. Would you like to see them?" New displays appeared, showing projected battle scenarios. In every simulation, the Dominion fleet was destroyed within minutes. The human computer had found weaknesses in their formations that the Kethvar themselves had never noticed. "This is impossible," Admiral Thekmore said. "Admiral, let me explain something about human warfare," Chen replied. "When we fought each other on our home planet, we learned that information wins battles more than weapons do. The side that knows more about their enemy almost always wins." The Endurance Times began to move, gliding through space with the same impossible grace Zekthul had witnessed before. As it moved, its weapon systems tracked every ship in the Dominion fleet simultaneously. We also learned something else, Chen continued. Psychological warfare can be more effective than physical destruction. So before I destroy your ships, I am going to explain exactly how I will do it. Admiral Thickmore tried to interrupt, but Chen continued speaking. Admiral, your flagship has a design flaw in its main power coupling. If I target that specific point with a focused beam, your ship will lose power for approximately 4 minutes. During that time, I will disable your weapons and engines. As she spoke, a targeting beam from the Times Endurance Times painted the exact spot she was describing on the Times Iron Fist asterisk. Your second ship, the Times Bone Crusher asterisk, has inadequate armor plating around its missile storage bays. A single penetrating shot there will cause a chain reaction that will destroy the entire vessel. Another targeting beam highlighted the vulnerability. Should I continue? Chen asked. Admiral Thickmore realized that the human was not threatening them. She was teaching them. She was showing them exactly how helpless they were against human technology and tactics. What do you want? He asked. I want you to understand something very important, Chen replied. Humans did not come to space looking for war. We came looking for peace. We hoped to find civilizations that were better than us, more advanced, more civilized. The Times Endurance Times stopped moving, holding its position perfectly between the two groups of ships. Instead, we found species that think violence is the answer to every problem. Species that attack first and ask questions later. Species that think being peaceful means being weak. We are not weak, Admiral Thickmore protested. Compared to humans? Admiral, your most advanced weapons are toys compared to what we threw away centuries ago. Your best tactics are strategies that human generals abandoned as too simple. Your greatest military victories would be footnotes in our history books. The words hit the Kethvar like physical blows. Everything they believed about their own military superiority was being torn apart. Let me demonstrate, Chen said. The Times, Endurance Times fired a single shot that streaked across space faster than the Kethvar sensors could track. It struck the Times Iron Fist Times exactly where Chen had indicated, and the massive battle cruiser went dark. 4 minutes, Chen announced. Just as I predicted, before anyone could react, the human ship fired again. This time, the target was a destroyer on the edge of the formation. The shot punched through its hull like it was made of paper, causing precisely the kind of cascading explosion Chen had described. The ship broke apart in seconds. Admiral, Chen said calmly, I have just demonstrated that I can destroy any ship in your fleet whenever I choose. I could kill all of you right now and be home in time for dinner. The surviving Kethvar ships began to panic. Some tried to target the human vessel, but their weapons could not lock onto it. Others attempted to flee, but the Times Endurance Times was faster than anything they had. But I am not going to do that, Chen continued. Do you know why? Admiral Thickmore could not answer. He was staring at the wreckage of his destroyer, trying to understand how one ship had become so powerful. Because killing you all would not serve our strategic interests, Chen explained. Dead enemies cannot spread the word about what happened here. Dead enemies cannot warn their governments about human military capabilities. 1 kid ago, the Times Iron Fist Times slowly began to regain power as its backup systems came online. Admiral Thickmore found his voice again. What are you saying? I am saying that you are going to go home, Admiral. You are going to report what you saw here. You are going to tell your superiors that attacking human ships is a very bad idea. The human ship began moving again, this time positioning itself for departure. And Admiral, when you make your report, be sure to mention that this was just one ship, a prototype with experimental weapons. Our actual military fleet is much larger and much more dangerous. The communication ended, leaving the Kethvar fleet alone with the wreckage and the terrible knowledge of what they had encountered. Admiral Thickmore stood in the emergency council chambers of the Kethvar Dominion 3 days after the encounter with the human ship. The massive room was filled with the highest-ranking officials in their government, all of them demanding answers about what had happened in the outer systems. You are telling us, said High Commander Zarthek, that one human ship destroyed a destroyer and disabled your flagship? Yes, sir, Thickmore replied. But that is not the worst part. What could be worse than that? The Admiral activated a holographic display showing the battle recordings. Every official in the room watched as the endurance times, systematically dismantled their forces with casual ease. They were not trying to win, Thekmore explained. They were teaching us a lesson. They could have destroyed our entire fleet in the first minute of combat, but they chose not to. They wanted us to understand exactly how outmatched we were. High Commander Zarthek studied the recordings carefully. He was a veteran of many wars and knew how to analyze battle tactics. What he saw made his blood run cold. Their weapons technology is at least 50 years ahead of ours, he said quietly. Maybe more. Sir, Thekmore continued, the human captain claimed that this was just an experimental ship. She said their real military fleet was much more powerful. How is that possible? They have only been in space for a few years. I believe we have severely underestimated them, sir. Their captain explained that humans have been studying us since first contact. Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, was also intelligence gathering. Another official spoke up. That would mean they have detailed information about every major species in this region. Yes, sir. They demonstrated complete knowledge of our ship designs, tactics, and strategic thinking. They knew more about our military capabilities than we know about theirs. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans had been gathering intelligence all along, then every government in the galaxy was potentially compromised. What else did this captain tell you? High Commander Zarthek asked. She explained that humans choose diplomacy not because they are weak, but because they understand what war actually costs. She said their species has been fighting wars for thousands of years and has developed weapons that could destroy entire worlds. Admiral Thekmore paused, then continued. Sir, she mentioned nuclear weapons. Multiple times, the silence in the room became absolute. Nuclear weapons were considered the ultimate taboo in galactic civilization. No species had used them for centuries, and most had dismantled their arsenals long ago. They still have nuclear weapons? Someone asked. Apparently many types of them. The captain spoke about them like they were normal parts of their arsenal. High Commander Zarthek stood up and began pacing around the room. Admiral, I want you to think very carefully about your answer to this next question. In your professional military opinion, how many human ships would it take to conquer the Kethvar Dominion? Thekmore had been dreading this question. He had spent the last 3 days analyzing the battle recordings and running simulations. The answer terrified him. Sir, based on what I observed, I believe a single human ship could destroy our entire battle fleet. If they have more ships like the endurance asterisk, then the number required to conquer us would be very small. How small? Perhaps 5 ships, sir. Maybe fewer. The room erupted in shocked voices. Officials demanded explanations, argued about the impossibility of such estimates, and called for additional intelligence reports. High Commander Zarthek raised his hand for silence. Admiral, you will prepare a complete report on this encounter. Leave nothing out. I want every detail of their technology, tactics, and capabilities. Yes, sir. And Admiral, this report will be classified at the highest level. Furthermore, you will prepare a second report for distribution to our allies. This second report will emphasize that the Kethvar Dominion recommends extreme caution when dealing with human vessels. Several hours later, in a secure communications facility, High Commander Zarthek sent encrypted messages to the leadership of every major civilization in their region of space. The message was simple and direct. Do not engage human ships under any circumstances. The species is far more dangerous than initial intelligence suggested. Recommend immediate review of all policies regarding human contact. Similar messages went out from dozens of other governments over the following weeks as word spread about the encounter. Intelligence agencies throughout the galaxy began reviewing every interaction they had ever had with humans, looking for signs they had missed. On Earth, in the headquarters of the United Federation, Admiral Sarah Chen sat across from the Secretary of Defense, making her own report. The demonstration was successful, Admiral? The Secretary asked. Yes, sir. The Kethvar will spread the word throughout their sphere of influence. I expect similar caution from allied species within the month. I, and our intelligence operations remain undetected. As far as they know, we simply gathered information through normal diplomatic channels. They have no idea how extensive our surveillance network actually is. The secretary nodded. What about the weapons demonstration? I showed them enough to ensure they understand the consequences of attacking our ships, but not enough to reveal our full capabilities. They believe the time's endurance times represents our most advanced technology, when in reality, Admiral Chen smiled slightly. The time's endurance times is about 15 years behind our current frontline vessels, sir. If they had seen one of our actual warships, they might have decided that surrender was their only option, and we do not want that yet. No, sir. Fear is useful, but desperation could drive them to form alliances against us. Better to let them think they have a chance if they leave us alone. The secretary stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the bustling city below. Admiral, when we first encountered other species, many of our leaders hoped we could finally put our military history behind us. They thought we could become a peaceful civilization. Yes, sir. Instead, we discovered that the galaxy is full of species that only respect strength. They attack what they perceive as weak and submit to what they fear. Admiral Chen nodded. Human nature prepared us well for galactic politics, sir. Indeed. Your mission reports suggest that other species fight wars like games. They have rules, limitations, concepts of honor that restrict their effectiveness. That is correct, sir. Most species cannot imagine the kind of warfare that humans consider normal. Total war, targeting civilian populations, weapons of mass destruction. These concepts are foreign to them, and they must remain foreign, the secretary said firmly. If other species truly understood human military capabilities, they would unite against us immediately. Our only advantage is that they think we are stronger than we appear, not that we are stronger than they can possibly imagine. Admiral Chen stood to leave. What are my orders for future encounters, sir? Continue the current strategy. Respond to aggression with overwhelming force, but keep the demonstrations limited. Let them think we are dangerous enough to avoid, not dangerous enough to require elimination. And if a species does not learn from the example of others, the secretary turned back to the window. Then we will provide additional education. As many lessons as necessary, until the galaxy understands that humans are not prey. After the admiral left, the secretary remained at the window, watching the peaceful city below. Most of the people going about their daily lives had no idea that their species had just taken another step toward becoming the dominant power in the galaxy. They did not know that humanity's reputation for diplomacy was actually a carefully calculated strategy to hide their true nature. The galaxy would learn, eventually, that humans preferred peace not because they were weak, but because they were too good at war. Until then, the Federation would continue to smile diplomatically while quietly gathering intelligence on every species they encountered. The message was clear to anyone who chose to look for it. Attacking humans was not just dangerous, it was a form of suicide. The only question was whether the galaxy's various civilizations were smart enough to learn from the Kethvar's mistake, or if they would need to receive their own personal education about human military doctrine. Either way, humanity would be ready.